Hello and welcome to Resilience and Relationships R&R. I am Stephanie Olson here with
Rebecca Saunders.
Yes, and we are so glad to be with you today. We're going to talk about not a very light topic today, right? We're going to talk about political violence. And although I hate talking about this, I think it's part of something we do as far as, our work in SA and HT and all of that stuff. And so I think it fits appropriately in some of what we're going to talk about.
It does. And before we really get started in the conversation, I think it's important to note, too, that as an organization, we don't take a hard political stance and we
Yeah,
have varying opinions within our organization. We are
absolutely.
not about to say this is how you should feel or we support this view or this view. It's
Yeah,
more about what is happening when those views are expressed wrong, in a wrong way,
right,
a violent way.
right. Pause. Plug this in. Okay, there we go.
We need to get one of those thingies.
Yes, and yeah, no, I agree 100%. And I'm sorry, but there is just a right and wrong in this for sure. So we are coming off of so many political, whether assassinations, certainly. And we just want to talk about that because recently Charlie Kirk, who is was a very public conservative spokesperson, was shot and killed at an event in Utah. And so that was a really striking thing. At the same time, almost simultaneously, there was a shooting at one of the Denver public schools that was happening at the same time. We also are kind of on the heels that in August there was a man who just stood up and stabbed a woman and killed her on a bus in Charlotte. And we also have recently Democratic State Representative Melissa Hortman and her husband were killed by a tragic shooting. And Senator John Hoffman and his wife were wounded in a targeted political violent act. And I think we just want to address that because regardless of what side you are on, right or left, white or black, all the things. I mean, I could say all the things that have brought division in our country lately. Violence against a human being is wrong.
It's never the answer.
It's never the answer. And I think it's so important because one of the things that we teach and the foundation of everything we teach is you have an intrinsic value that can't be changed. That it doesn't matter who you are, what you look like, where you live, how much money you have or don't have.
Your
You
belief.
have yes, your beliefs. Yeah, you have an intrinsic value that cannot be changed. And I was speaking at a conference yesterday and I said, so we all know that, and look to your right, look to your left, everybody has an intrinsic value. But then I asked, and this was a multidisciplinary uh, group, so there were a lot of forensic interviewers, law enforcement, advocates, people who work on the front lines. These are SANE nurses. These were amazing people who do great work. And one of the things that I asked them was, what about the perpetrators that we're dealing with? And one of the law enforcement officers said, no, they do not. And he was being facetious, but the reality is, and we all agreed, everybody has an intrinsic value that can't be changed. Everyone has human dignity. Everybody has worth. And unfortunately, that doesn't mean that everybody is doing the right thing, right? It doesn't mean that we don't have consequences to our actions, or if we're doing something wrong, it's not an evil thing that we've done. I mean, I'm not saying any of that. But the fact that we are human beings gives us that human dignity. And I think we're in this season where we're just dehumanizing people because of what they believe or what they look like, even.
And I think that's the root of the issue is just we're not seeing that value in people. Because if you were to look at everyone as people with that value, then you can't go on to do some of these things that we're seeing.
No, no, human life is precious. And we look at, for example, Charlie Kirk, who was shot in public, and Irina Zaruska, I'm not sure if I'm saying her name correctly, but was stabbed on public transit. We have video of those things. And so because of that, we have seen, and I think that's one of the changes today in our world is that, even with school shootings were not a thing when I was going to school. We didn't have school shooting drills. Those were not something that happened. And even though schools typically don't have or do have cameras, and you can see maybe the shooter enter, or, we had that shooting at Von Mar in Omaha several years ago. You can see the shooter entering, but they have not shown anyone getting shot until recently. And I think that makes it extra difficult because in the case of the two I just mentioned, Charlie Kirk and Irina Zarutska, those family members
Have that.
have to see that. I
Part,
can't imagine.
I mean, it's hard enough losing someone you love, but then to have that not just on video to see once, but on every news station and playing over and over.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's traumatic in itself.
Right. It really is. And so, one of the things that we were saying before we talked about this is we're not even going to talk about the circumstances around it, or whether you agree with people or don't agree. We're talking about people who are conservative, people who are liberal, and people we don't know really anything about, but a woman who is from Ukraine. And it really isn't about what we believe. It really is about, we have got to be able to have conversations and have dialogue and not respond with this violence.
And I think that we're seeing, especially through these things, that we have video footage of some of these things that have happened, right? And we're seeing just how desensitized
Mm.
a lot of us are to that violence when you can take a video of someone being killed and then make light of it. I mean,
Oh
that
my
brings
gosh. It's horrifying. Actually, what is really interesting was my sister saw it on social media, and her first response was, geez, that is a sick thing to do with AI. That's
mm,
what she thought. And then realized that nope, this is real and happening in real time. And then people celebrate it. People are celebrating violence and celebrating. And I just, it hurts my heart. It really does. It hurts my heart. And so we've got people on both sides of the aisle, um, people who don't deserve to die and who are doing what they believe is right. And here's the thing, and this is, I was thinking about this the other day. We cannot, I come from a Jewish family. And when I think about the Holocaust and what was perpetrated on the Jewish people, we can't go back there. And I really think that there is so much that, because you believe this or because you do this or you look like this or whatever it may be, we are dangerously close to repeating some of those actions.
I completely agree with you. I think some might take that statement of comparing, some of the things we're seeing to the Holocaust as dramatic, but I don't think so. It may not look exactly the same, but a lot of those elements are there. That
Yep.
devaluing of people who are different from you. We're
Mhm.
seeing that time and time again from people on both sides of the political spectrum.
Mhm. Well, Hitler didn't start with gas chambers, right? We know
That,
that.
yeah,
It's a slow fade, and Hitler started to poison the minds of people who aren't like what he wanted. And that is the slow fade that happens. And um I certainly had hope it never gets to that ever, ever again. But that's how it starts. This dehumanizing human beings. And frankly, I'm sorry, that goes on both sides. Both parties are at fault for those things. And um, all races can be at fault for those things. And I just think we have to be so careful to really not dehumanize people, bottom line. Yeah.
absolutely. And I think, I'm glad that you mentioned too that it can be both sides because it is.
Mhm.
And I think
Mhm.
right now, especially in the light of Charlie Kirk's passing,
Mhm.
you know, a lot of conservatives pointing fingers.
Mhm.
You know, what you're seeing in one moment can be totally opposite the next moment, right?
Mhm.
We can look at one situation and we can say, oh, well, it's this group of people. But in reality, I mean, if we just even take the last year, we'll look at what all's
Yeah.
happened. Every group is at fault here.
Yes.
It's a human problem.
It's a that's a great way. It is a human problem. I had the opportunity to meet with a couple of our staff members because I was speaking at a conference, and we are all over the place nationally. And so we don't get to see each other very often. And I was speaking at a conference in the same state that they were in. So I got to have dinner with them, and we were talking about this. And I said, I think there were like literally three political parties at the table. There were three of us at the table. There were three political parties at the table. I believe, I don't even know that for a fact because I don't know. But one of the staff members was asking about Charlie Kirk, and she said, I don't agree with a thing that he says. But what happened to him was horrific and should have never happened. And that's, I think, when we look at like Gavin Newsom came out and said this is Obama and Bernie Sanders coming out against the violence. Like, we don't get to do that. We don't get to take people out because they don't agree with us. That's not,
Well,
should not be a thing.
and I think what we're seeing is there are, you know, I'm seeing it more with younger voters, but I think it's across the board.
Mhm.
But becoming so passionate about politics, which in itself is not a bad
Great.
thing.
Yeah.
But we cannot forget basic human decency in that.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, there are lesser offenses too that I've seen of like, doxing people on social media. That's not
Mm,
appropriate.
mm.
That's, I mean, taking physical violence, doing things, that
What's
their
doxing
families are,
people? Do you wanna
oh,
define that for
yes, yes.
anybody who's older than 30?
So putting private information public, like where you
Right,
live, where your family might frequent, where your kids could go to school, all of that personal information that could allow someone to find you.
right.
And so we'll see that sometimes of, I'm going to make all of that information about you public so people who disagree with you can come and threaten you or harm you. And like that is so crossing a line. And I think we've lost sight of what appropriate boundaries are,
Mhm.
that it is okay to respectfully disagree with someone. And in
Yes.
fact, it's good. It's healthy for our society to have differing beliefs and
Yeah.
debates.
It's very healthy. And, I think, and that we've removed active listening for sure. I think that we don't even want to listen to somebody who disagrees with us. And, one of the things that I think is really important is that we have these dialogues with people in a peaceful way. And here's what I will say about Charlie Kirk. Regardless of what you believe about what he believes,
Mhm.
he was a good dialoguer and a great debater, and he didn't raise his voice. I mean, at least, I mean, I
Not
don't,
that I've seen.
yeah, I don't know. And so disagreed, but respectfully. And I think that that's, but again, whether you agree or disagree, I do think that we have to be able to dialogue and have those conversations. And if I say something that you disagree with, maybe learn how to respond in a way that's not out of anger. Because I know it is frustrating when somebody completely disagrees with you. It is frustrating. And that's why I've always said that you are not ready to educate people about some difficult topics if you're still really healing through those things. Because you get to be angry, right? You get to heal. And people ask questions that are hard. It could be very, in fact, I think I've talked about this before, but I was on a forum, like a social media forum. There was an article written about SA, and the person was talking about their experience, and it was a well-known person with a well-known person, and somebody in the forum legitimately asked a question. Can I ask why people don't name their abusers? And there was just this flood of how dare you ask that question? What are you and
Legitimate question from
it
someone who understands.
it really is. I just want to understand, I don't understand. So I jumped in and I said, I just want to share that I am a survivor of sexual and domestic violence, and I understand anger. And you have the right to be angry when you've been treated like that. And that is, that no shame there. What we can't do out of that anger is educate people.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean that, I mean, not everybody should educate people. Not everybody should be educators, right? And I think that if you're not ready to have a conversation or not ready to debate that, that's
Okay.
okay. Yes. But if you are trying to educate somebody, and that includes like standing in front of somebody just one on one or whatever, I think be mindful that learn how to regulate and how to, because it's not fair of me to just to start I think when it gets bad, I don't think there's any problem with getting heated and like, okay, I'm going to raise my voice a little. I think when it gets inappropriate is when we start name calling, because now we've just lost the argument. Like once you resort to name calling,
Consulting. Yeah.
yeah, you've just lost the argument. And so that's a big deal. Uh, but also the the hotter it gets, the more it can lead to violence like we've seen with the representatives and then Charlie Kirk. And even Arena, who was not a known person, and this person didn't know her from iota.
Right.
She got on a bus and happened to sit in front of this person. That's all she did wrong. I mean, so nothing. That's not wrong, right?
Did not do a single thing wrong. Yeah.
But we I don't even know what I was saying. It's just so disheartening. I'm it's disheartening.
Well, and I think sometimes what we're seeing with that anger too is maybe you had an experience with a certain person or a group of people, and then you assume, I mean, right or wrong, you assume that this other person who looks somewhat similar, maybe it's
Mm,
the color of their skin, maybe it's an activity they're involved in, whatever it is, and you assume that you know everything about them, you know the way they believe, and you have this anger toward them that is so unfounded because you've not even stopped to have a conversation.
yeah, absolutely. Because if you start to humanize that person, you'll find out things about them that aren't horrible, right? I mean, that's the whole point of humanizing. And I am not
Hard to care about people
it
because
is.
then you can't take your anger out on them.
I know.
You have to find a way to manage those negative emotions on your own. It's a lot easier to take it out on somebody else.
Yeah. Yeah, and sometimes let's be honest, it feels good when you're wronged and you want to lash out at somebody that might feel good in that moment. It is not something that will create change. And, one of the things I was talking about at this conference was how do we create change in a world of SA and HT and domestic violence? How do we create change and make it so it's foundational? Like, we're not going to live in a world where violence is something that is an option. So, SA is not optional. And so, how do we create that change culturally and make a difference that way? I know that this is not how to create that change, that violence isn't going to do it. And I it's really
Well,
challenging.
and if anything, it makes things worse,
Yeah.
right? I mean, like at at best, it's ineffective.
Mhm.
At worst, it creates more tension.
Right.
And whoever you're trying to stop, whoever supported that person, they are now even more so going to fight against you. I mean, it's not a solution.
So I was saying earlier about, like I never had to experience school drills where we had to leave a building because of an active shooter
Which is
school drills.
fascinating to me because I don't remember ever not doing them.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, there were just no school shootings when I was in school. It wasn't a thing. And that's a whole other conversation, right? But I think what is hard for me, because I never feared going to school. Like, were there school bullies? And I mean, I had people pick on me too, and all those things, but I didn't have a fear that somebody would come in and shoot up my school. That was never a fear of mine. We had fire drills, we had tornado drills, but the trauma that we are putting our kids through is horrifying. That they have no safe place to go, it's awful.
Even in the last month, I personally have had two people in my family that their schools have been locked down.
Wow.
So I have a cousin who's in college, um, and he is in a different state from where I am,
Mhm.
but his college was locked down because
Wow.
of the threats, and I believe they found someone, but nothing had happened. They caught it early enough.
Right.
Well, then my little sister, in a completely different state from that cousin, also just this last week, there was a threat. Someone had called and said, I've got a gun, I'm going to start shooting. And
Mm.
they didn't find any weapons, they didn't find anyone. But, like, obviously, that's going to send everyone on high
Right.
alert. The whole school was locked down, all the parents are freaking out
Right.
because you never know if it's serious or not. And I think, like, there's even an increase of people pretending like it's
Right.
a fun thing to do to get everyone freaked out about this.
Right.
And it's so sad to see, like, when did this become a joke? But also, when did this become real life?
Right. Yeah. I'm just looking up school shootings prior to the year 2000. And there were incidents where there were shootings like with gang members, and so it's not that it didn't happen. Like, I'm looking specifically in the 50s, and there were certainly things there. Most of these were one person targeted, interestingly enough. There was the Kent State shooting that happened in the 70s, and that was awful, and that was a mass shooting. What I'm not seeing are a lot of mass shootings in schools back in the day. So I I said it's not a thing. It wasn't a thing when I was a kid. And so that's not necessarily the case, but we certainly did not have,
Not to the degree.
not to the not to the it's like, I mean, oh my gosh, it's almost like every other day you see a shooting and something's going on. So,
Well, and I think another component to that is that social media piece,
yeah.
of like, we are aware of things happening in completely different parts of the country that
Mm,
we may have never known about before.
that's a great
Which,
point.
going back to the anxiety on our kids, I mean, that is too much. Sometimes I, as an adult, just feel like I don't want to be informed of what's going on today
Yeah,
because too much is a heavy weight.
it's
And
true.
so, looking at, teenagers who are getting news on their phones and they're seeing all these things on social media, they're constantly inundated with the violence going on in our country and in the world at large.
Hmm.
And I think that that plays a role in becoming desensitized to that violence. Like, shootings are just a thing that happens, or
Exactly.
stabbings just happen. But in that process, I think part of what's happened is it's made it feel more acceptable. I've seen however other many people violently attack someone they disagree with.
Mm-hmm.
So now that's an option in my brain. And it's
Yeah,
scary.
it is scary. And when you actually see it, that's the other thing. Like, we are witnessing it on social media. It's not that we're just hearing
Or
about it on social media. It's not that we're literally witnessing it. And I do think that changes things. The other thing I will say about social media is when somebody posts something that's kind of hot topic, and you read the comments and people are agreeing, even when people agree, I swear the anger comes out in their comments. And so this becomes normalized. Like, you say something, I can call you a name because you're not in front of me, or I can say you're an idiot, or I can whatever, and it becomes very normalized. And so that does lead to the desensitization of human beings. Even political figures, you think about, certainly we had news back in the day. News was very, I used to watch news with my grandma and grandpa. I know you can't even imagine this, but we had one TV and you had to get up and turn the channel, and we had like three channels. And I lived in the Chicago area, but news was like, I'm going to deliver the facts. I don't, as a journalist, have an opinion. I'm going to deliver the facts. That's how news was. And so,
I can't even picture that
yeah,
either.
yeah. And so, so the president of the United States, for example, you may completely disagree with the president of the United States, but your conversations about that are with family and with friends and with people. So it's just I don't know, it's just a different time. And so when you see all of these conversations coming and just having opinions, and this is what I think, and this is you're wrong, and there's nothing wrong with dialogue, but it is becoming so, it's almost abusive dialogue, because fighting all the time.
It gets intense.
Yeah.
I mean, I so if there's a news story happening that I want to know more about, I go to like 4 or 5 different places to try to piece the whole story together without opinion
That's what
because
I was,
that's normal.
yes.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so I have a news it's a news website, social, whatever. It's called Ground News.
Oh, I've heard,
And
but I haven't used it.
it is unbelievable because they give, and I am really big on looking at both sides of a topic and really studying both sides. Now, what we have to remember is that if we're looking at our news on social media, the algorithm is going to guide that, right? So if you are a liberal person and these are your beliefs, your algorithm is going to bring stories to you that you agree with. If you're
Mm.
a conservative person and these are your beliefs, your algorithm is going to bring stories that you agree with. And so what happens is we start looking at the news going, well, see, everybody agrees with me, or see, everybody agrees with me. So I'm not doing a commercial for Ground News, but if you do want to sponsor us, by all means. But the the great thing about it is it gives actually three sides. It says and it talks about being having a blind spot. So if you are on the right, you're not going to see this. If you're on the left, you're not going to see this. If you're in the center. And so it tells like the percentage of this story was for the right, this story was for the left, this story was for center. It's amazing. And so you can read articles that are all the same, all of the same topic, but with the slant to the right, slant to the left, center. And it is great because then you can start to really piece together what is
The actual.
accurate. Yes. Yes. And I have really found it very effective. There is a cost, but I have found it an effective way to find news instead of turning on channels or, searching for it, reading a certain, it's just great because it gives you all sides. And that's
Awesome.
what we need. It would be great to get the news without opinions, personally. That's how it used to be.
Sounds lovely.
Yeah, it really was. Yeah, just give me the facts. My dad used to always say, just the facts, ma'am. I think that was from Dragnet or something. But yes, that's all I want. Give me the facts. Give me the facts. I will then make an opinion based on those things with my value system. That'd be great.
Well, and I think that's something we've lost sight of too, is it's okay to have your own opinion.
Yes.
You know? You can believe what
Weird.
you believe.
Weird.
And I think that like so often it's like, okay, well, I have these political views, so whatever this person's opinion is now my opinion.
Right.
No, like that's ridiculous.
It is
There are however many
ridiculous.
people in the world, and we should all have slightly different opinions because we're
Right.
different people with different experiences.
Yes. Yes. And I think that's extremely important. And it's hard for people, but critically important. Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I think we're just in a rough time right now and it's scary out there and it's disheartening and I mean, there's just so much going on in our world that's not good. So I think bottom line is for us, you have an intrinsic value that cannot be changed. Doesn't matter who you are, where you live, how much money you have, how much you don't have, your gender, what color skin you have. It doesn't matter. You have an intrinsic value that cannot be changed. And it's precious, that human dignity, that you are human, and this is a human problem. And so let's respect each other as human beings. That doesn't mean we agree with people. That doesn't even mean we might think like that person is not a good person, or gosh, I don't like that person, or whatever. That's fine. But But that doesn't mean that we should be calling them names and we should be violent towards them or whatever. So,
Everyone deserves that basic level of respect.
yeah, basic level, right? And then you earn or lose it,
Right.
right? But as human beings, that we walk around with these total strangers that we don't know, and it's okay to just be kind. I see, there's all those shirts that are just be kind. And I think that's a really important thing. That doesn't mean you approve of things that are wrong. That doesn't mean, but just be kind. And can we stop the violence? We are human beings. Oh, yeah. It's disheartening. So, anything else to add?
No, I think that covers it.
All right. Well, on that note,
We'll have a lighter podcast next time, I'm
let's
sure.
let's do. So go out and do amazing things, but get some R&R, and we will see you next time. Thank you.